If you're gardening in tight quarters, be it a balcony, a patio, or a small backyard, and want your soil to thrive, worms are your best allies. They aerate, enrich, and regenerate dead soil like tiny underground farmers. But here's the challenge. In compact garden spaces, worms don't just wander in by accident. You have to invite them, and more importantly, bait them. Whether you're starting a worm bin, reviving a tired raised bed, or building living soil in a planter box, the right bait recipe can fill your soil with worms fast, even in the smallest of growing setups. Let's skip the fluff and jump straight into the real recipe that brings worms rushing in, even overnight. The most effective worm bait starts with one principle: mimic what worms seek in nature. They are decomposers by design. That means they're drawn to soft, moist, partially broken down plant material rich in bacteria. The bait recipe we've tested and perfected at Hydrohaven combines fermenting greens, mild sugars, and a touch of natural grit to bring worms in fast, sometimes within hours, especially in warm, moist soil. Start with a small bowl of overripe greens. Wilted lettuce, cabbage leaves, or old spinach work best. Chop them finely to expose more surface area. Then mix in used coffee grounds, which offer both a nitrogen boost and a gritty texture that worms love. Follow that with a tablespoon of unsulfured molasses or mashed overripe banana. This introduces natural sugars that feed the microbes, which in turn attract worms. If you don't have molasses or bananas, you can even use a small splash of diluted fruit juice. Just avoid anything citrus-based. Next, sprinkle in a small handful of crushed eggshells or pulverized oats. This acts as grit for the worm's digestion and provides essential calcium for their reproductive health. Now, moisten the mixture with a bit of dechlorinated water, just enough to create a soft, sponge-like consistency. Don't let it get soggy or soupy. Once it's ready, let this mixture sit in a sealed container for 24 to 48 hours to start the fermentation process. This step is crucial. The microbial activity that develops during fermentation is the secret ingredient that pulls worms in from the surrounding soil. They can literally sense the microbial feast from inches away. Once your bait is bubbling with microbial life, it's time to apply it. If you're working with a worm bin, simply scoop a small amount into one corner and cover it lightly with bedding. In raised beds or containers, dig a shallow hole no deeper than 4 inches, drop in a palm-sized portion of the bait, and cover it loosely with compost or aged mulch. It's important to avoid burying it too deep or compacting the soil on top. Worms tend to forage near the surface, especially in moist environments, and they need easy access to your bait. The timing of placement also matters. Late afternoon or early evening is ideal, as worms are most active at night when temperatures are cooler and the soil retains moisture. For small space growers, bait stations can also be made using repurposed containers like yogurt cups or tin cans with holes punched in the sides and bottom. Fill them with the bait, then bury the containers so that the rim is level with the soil. Worms can crawl in and feast, while you can easily lift the container to check on activity or refill it as needed. This method keeps your soil tidy while still creating micro-worm hotspots. Worms aren't just looking for food, they're also picky about their environment. If you're not seeing worm activity after baiting, check your moisture levels. The top few inches of soil should feel like a wrung-out sponge. Too dry, and worms won't come near. Too wet, and you risk driving out oxygen, which repels worms and their microbial allies. You can also sprinkle a thin layer of leaf mold or finished compost over the bait zone to mimic the forest floor and help regulate moisture while boosting microbial activity even further. One important tip: avoid using citrus peels, onions, garlic, or anything salty in your bait. These substances release compounds that can repel or even harm worms. Similarly, stay away from meat, dairy, or oily leftovers. While they might attract scavengers, they can also cause foul odors and lead to anaerobic conditions, not what you want in your small garden space. Another powerful variation of worm bait, especially effective if you're jump-starting a new raised bed, is the trench feeding method. Create a narrow, shallow trench down the center of your bed and fill it with alternating layers of bait and aged compost or shredded cardboard. This becomes a long-term buffet for worms and can encourage them to stay in your growing space for weeks. As the bait decomposes, the worms till and fertilize the surrounding soil, creating a fertile zone that radiates outward. What makes this recipe particularly potent for urban gardeners is its scalability. You don't need a backyard or a compost pile. A single small tub, a few old vegetables, and some coffee grounds are all it takes to jumpstart your worm population in any container or raised bed. In just a couple of weeks, consistent baiting with this method can turn lifeless planter soil into a rich, aerated environment teeming with worm castings and microbial diversity. And the beauty is that you're not just feeding worms, you're feeding your plants at the same time. Worms digest the bait and return it to your garden as humus-rich castings full of plant-available nutrients and beneficial microbes that dramatically boost root growth, disease resistance, and water retention. If you've been struggling to keep your small space garden thriving, this worm bait recipe may be the secret weapon you've been missing. It's cheap, fast, and incredibly effective. Best of all, it turns everyday kitchen waste into a living soil amendment. If this guide helped you, do us a favor. Subscribe to Hydrohaven and share this video with a fellow gardener. Whether you're in an apartment or tending a balcony bed, worms can be your underground army. You just need to know how to call them in. Happy baiting!